This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from Editor and Publisher magazine, the authoritative voice of news media since 1884, serving newspapers, broadcast, digital, and all forms of news publishing.
And greetings once again, Mike Linder, publisher of E&P Magazine. As always, we kick off with housekeeping, urging those who find us on podcast platforms to follow. Those that watch on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button below, smash the bell. To the right, you'll get an update each and every time we upload this weekly podcast series we dedicate to news publishing, E&P Reports. Danielle Coffey, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for having me.
We have a new tradition on our show. Now that every other story we do, if not every story, is on AI. What we do now is, rather than me read your profile to those that don't know who you are off of LinkedIn, we go to ChatGPT and ask it to describe our famous guests like you. And you get a chance to rate AI from an A to an F and how it describes Danielle Coffey. Are you ready? Here we go. I don't know if you've looked at yourself, but
No.
Here you go. Here's ChatGPT's explanation of you. Danielle Coffey is the president and CEO of the News Media Alliance, a trade organization that represents news publishers and media companies. News Media Alliance advocates for policies and business practices that support the sustainability of journalism in the news industry. Coffey has been involved in efforts to secure fair compensation for news organizations from tech companies like Google and Facebook, particularly through legislation like the Journalism, Competition, and Preservation Act, which we will discuss, JCPA. She's been a vocal supporter for the rights of publishers and has played a significant role in shaping the industry's approach to dealing with major tech problems. A to F, how did ChatGPT do?
You know, it was almost verbatim from my bio, which just lets you know that they really are scraping our content and competing with us and unlawfully using our quality journalism. So you just put my face in court.
Everything it says about me just coming from either my Mike Linder page or the Who Am I page on E&P, so I agree. But we're not here to discuss that, or we could sprinkle that in. We only have 20 minutes to go over some major issues, and we're so honored to have you on. We're gonna unpack three things. We're gonna take a brief look at what recently happened in California with a public-private partnership, with your permission. I really want to focus on where the JCPA is at, because we haven't been giving it a lot of air lately, but it seems to still be percolating, and I think you've got some things to discuss. And then finally, your major win with the DOJ. So if your permission, can we take a quick break for our commercial and come back and unpack those three things?
That sounds great. Thanks, Mike.
This episode of E&P Reports is exclusively sponsored by Blocks Digital, formerly Town News. Even though the name has changed, their commitment to the media industry is as strong as ever. Blocks Digital is now even better positioned to deliver integrated solutions like content management, audience development, advertising revenue, video management, and more. Join the over 2,000 news publishers worldwide that power their ongoing digital transformation with Blocks Digital, serving over 141 million monthly users who view over 6.5 billion pages of content each year. You can trust Blocks Digital to empower you, to connect you at scale with the community you need to reach. Blocks Digital, formerly Town News, now reimagined to help meet the news publishing challenges of tomorrow and beyond. Learn more at blocksdigital.com.
All right. We only have 20 minutes, Danielle. Mm-hmm. Let's briefly touch on California. I mean, recently, Governor Gavin Newsom and Assembly Member Buffy Wicks announced a private-public partnership agreement, which happened like out of the blue to some, or maybe not. We've been getting everybody's posting about it, good or bad, right or wrong. What is your overview of what recently happened in California and how it's going to impact everything going forward with big tech?
So, the CJPA, AB 886, was launched by Buffy Wicks in March 2023, and she was amazing for the last 2 years. It was originally a usage fee that turned into arbitration, was amended to pay out per journalist, passed through swimmingly in the Assembly in the summer of 2023. But then Google started their antics in Canada And there was a pause, kind of to see what, when it went to the Senate after it passed the Assembly, it would go into Senator Umberg's Judiciary Committee. That was the first of 3 hurdles in the Senate. And he wanted to pause and make sure we're doing the right thing. Also, Canada's happening. How's that going to go? So then he held a hearing in November of 2023. Canadians testified, ethnic publishers testified, we testified, LA Times testified, consumer groups testified, the labor unions testified that this must be done. He heard loud and clear. Google also testified, saying that they wouldn't pull news like they would in Canada. They didn't have an intention of doing that, is what they said. And then what happened was when the bill started moving through the Senate the following year, Umberg, was going to bring it before committee, Google pulled news. Or they started testing in California. So they started their tactics. At the same time, a competing bill was raised. They purported not to be competing, and that until the author said that it was a better solution. I think, a faction started being created, divided industry. That was very hurtful to the effort. I think
because we looked like we had 2 bills trying to go through at the same time, and Google took advantage of that, right? I mean, if I may ask.
Yeah, it's never
right.
Strategically, it's never good to have a divided industry. I mean, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
And then, but, at the same time, this bill, the governor publicly said he wouldn't pass any new taxes. So we thought, okay, it'll just move alongside. Maybe it might be leverage, and it wasn't ultimately. But we got the bill through, Buffy Wick's bill through, Senate Judiciary. And successfully through the last hurdle, which would be the appropriations bill, before it was going to go to the floor. So the governor and Assembly Member Wicks, who again has been a champion for us this entire time, preferred a negotiated settlement to passing the bill. So they approached Google, discussions began. They came up with a public-private partnership that ended as $45 million in the first year. The total ranges from, and $45 million, when I say that, I mean the fund that, because there's other funds, there's like a little one for AI and another one for pre-existing, their GNI showcase thing. So the $45 million is just to news publishers, and actually is the same amount that the Canadian news publishers were paid. Because 63% of $74 million is $45 million. So it's about the same as Canada. But the 2 things that there was backlash about was that the $45 million and the total package is $280 to $360.
Right.
Right. But the 45 for the first year to this fund that's just checks distributed to journalists, Google walks away. The 2 problems that people saw with that, and I even, despite Assembly Member Wick's valiant efforts, that I take issue with, is that it is a lot of state funding. Google was able to extract funds from the state and didn't pay that total amount themselves.
Right.
And the second thing that we take issue with is that, it's over 5 years. So while the total 280 to 360 is about, the same estimates that we believe that we're owed, because nationally that would be about $2.5 billion just for news publishers.
Right.
We've always estimated about $5 billion just for news publishers. If you bring in others, then it could be more. But nationally, that would mean about $2.5 billion, which is what we estimate we're owed. It's about half of the analysis that we had done. But the problem is that it's over 5 years. So those are the 2 things that we take issue with. And it demonstrates Google's monopoly power.
Exactly.
It's why the federal government needs to step in. They have been deemed a monopoly that we'll talk about later. And they are currently generating a tremendous amount of revenue off of our content, and that has to stop.
Now let's pivot. I mean, with this partnership in place, how does this influence your strategy in pushing the JCPA through? That is the next thing I want to move on to now. You got to fly in on September 11th. You're bringing in many news publishing executives. You're going to be doing the job that you have to do. You do well in Washington, D.C. Give us that update and that overview. Where is the JCPA today? Does this have any influence on that? Is everything moving forward the way you want it to be?
So there's a few. So what you're asking is, where do we go from here? And that's a great question, because we're thinking about it ourselves. We have a lot of allies here in Washington, D.C., government as well as external parties, who have all refocused and turned to government to call on them and their leadership and the leverage that's needed to be able to extract fair market value in return for our content. They've been working on it for 8 years. A case with the DOJ, an investigation that we'll get to. Can you tell I'm eager to discuss that?
You're coming. I'll turn that letter, Vanna. Don't worry.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So the federal legislation, though, since 2017 has been pending, and it's taken some twists and turns because of Europe, then Australia, Europe in 2019, Australia in 2020, payments that resulted in 2021, I believe, Canada in 2022. 2023 rather, I apologize, and will be paid soon. So how those pieces of legislation around the world have taken shape has influenced the JCPA. They may again with California, although I don't foresee much because of the different circumstances there. So the JCPA, with bipartisan support, more than 10 senators, Republican senators, that's needed to overcome this wonky policy thing that's called the cloture vote to be able to get it through in a lame duck session. What could that look like as far as moving vehicles? We have the omnibus. We have other vehicles that it could ride on. We will be calling on Congress when we come, when we bring 120 local news publishers, local and national and other news publishers to Washington, D.C. to call on Congress to pass this critical legislation that's now that after what happened in California reinforces the need for it, so that a patchwork across the country, which has already begun in Illinois, New York, Washington, and other states where they're eyeing, a couple of those already have introduced legislation, which may play out differently than California because there's different players involved, different circumstances. So I'm also asked, is this a template? There's critical things as part of the agreement that are a template. That's the definitions of eligibility. Everyone's eligible. Yes, the funds are funneled to California, as you would expect, but everyone is eligible. That is incredibly important for the First Amendment and for us to not pick and choose. Again, this is all of news industry. This is not just factions of it that need to be have legal rights to the value of their content. We cannot divide each other. We must stand together. We must push for the JCPA, and our industry must prevail.
Let's talk about the win now. On August 5th, the DOJ ruled against Google in a massively historic lawsuit, finding that Google violated antitrust laws. Excuse me for adding an editorial comment, duh, and its anti-competitive practices. And the News Media Alliance had this amazing white paper that you put together. That must have taken so many research, so many people, and time and energy in it. And many say that was part of how this all came together. Can you just give us now your position on this win? What does it mean? Google's obviously going to contest it, right? And how fired up are we to keep this ruling where it is?
So thank you for remembering the white paper. That took that took almost 2 years and hundreds of interviews, because what it did was it collected the evidence of anti-competitive conduct that harms publishers, and anonymous and aggregated, so that, the fear of retaliation is always a real thing.
Of course.
And in our work with the DOJ, who I deeply respect the leadership of, they did an amazing job. Actually, I'll remind you that case got started under the Trump administration, which is interesting, and
Yes.
carried forward under the Biden administration. So when Judge Mehta, Mehta, not Mehta,
Not
um,
META. I get it.
yeah, found that there was anti-competitive behavior, exclusive contracts, search text advertising, dominance, monopolization, and anti-competitive practices. The harmed parties were advertisers, users, and publishers. So with that ruling, there will now be a remedies trial in 2025, and it's almost like a trial within a trial. You can bring in evidence, so on and so forth, to be able to determine what remedy. We fully support what Moles has already vocalized, a breakup of this monopoly. I think that the scale was talked about a lot in the ruling, and that underpins a remedy to break them up. Short of that, news publishers, as a segment of the publishers that were harmed, also part of the ruling, publishers were harmed, should be remedied. And in what ways we're organizing our membership to get behind what we would support as remedies that we'll be advocating on, which has to do with the unlawful use of our content that we're trying to legislate on. It has to do with the use of our content for AI. We haven't talked a lot about AI yet. That's a large part of our portfolio right now, both legal, licensing, and legislation. And remedies there will address the future and not just the present and the past harms. And we're working with different parties to ensure that this monopoly cannot continue to cement its market power to the detriment of news publications and quality content. And we'll continue to do that over the next year.
Ruling really does. The timing couldn't be better for the JCPA, correct? Doesn't this bolster your case even more and make it, you're going in now with your guns a-blazing, or am I overestimating?
No, you're correct. It's a solution to the problem that was found by the court.
Excellent. And what's the success look like over 5 years when you roll in AI? I mean, will there be similar fights going down with similar resources needed and similar support from members in order to continue to champion the fact? I guess it all boils down to it's our content, darn it, and we deserve our compensation, or at least the value to be recognized. Am I correct?
Yes. The way that I see it is right now we're in a moment where it's a critical moment for our membership. So yes, should we stick together? Absolutely. Because I believe in this moment, we can change the trajectory through micro movements, meaning flex the muscle. We just won. We called on through legal instruments parties to prevent circumvention of our paywalls, GitHub, Mozilla, and others, a number of parties. So we're exercising our legal muscle, as well as potentially with larger AI actors. We're moving for compensation through legislation, potentially DOJ and other venues. We are protecting the quality in our business model to be able to reap the benefits of our labor so that we can reinvest in quality content. And then once we change that trajectory, I do believe over the next 5 years, we can start to recapture control
Here,
and
here.
own our own fate, regardless of distributor, platform, medium, whoever, whatever technology comes next. There will be something after AI. And so going into the future, to be able to thrive like I know that we can, we need to change it in the moment now, change that trajectory, because I do see that positive, thriving future as a reality.
Danielle Coffey, President and CEO of News Media Alliance. You have been an amazing advocate for this industry. I just want it known right now that prior to your elevation as CEO, you were the executive vice president and general counsel. So you got advocacy in your blood. But before that, you were doing advocacy, correct me if I'm wrong, for the telecommunications industry. So I think if I may editorialize, and I'm allowed to because I'm a publisher of a magazine, we got to all row in the same direction. And bravo to the News Media Alliance, the hard work you guys are doing. You keep your head to the ground. You're keeping up the good fight. And I know there's a lot of flack out there, but congratulations on the huge win with the DOJ. Good luck with obviously the JCPA. And will you do us a favor and constantly stay in touch with E&P so we can help you put up that critical bat signal and get our news publishing executives that pick up a phone, send an email, or run an ad so we're all rowing together. Do you agree?
Absolutely. You've been a great partner, Mike. I appreciate you wanting to have a conversation today in this moment. I think there's a lot for us to do over the next 3, 6, 12 months. And so, yes, working together and being united, I think, is more important now than ever.